By mid-1778, British troops weren't quite having the success that they wanted in the northern colonies during the American Revolutionary War, so they decided to pack up and head to the southern colonies. Yeah, the Redcoats shifted their focus to the south, where they thought that there would be more British sympathizers, otherwise known as loyalists. A few other reasons for the shift in strategy was that the south was very dependent on British trade. The South was rich with crops and tobacco, and the British thought that they could recruit slaves to join the war. You can't forget, too, that another reason the British moved south was because the French had just joined the war, and the British were concerned about their possessions in the Caribbean being at risk of a French attack. If they can take the South, the British felt like they could isolate and trap the North. We could capture those pesky founding fathers and colonists right there. But as we'll find out, a quick surrender of the southern colonies was easier said than done. Continentals had nearly 5,000 troops in the region, mostly based in Charleston. In 1779, General Augustine Prevost was the British commander and requested a replacement ahead of operations in Savannah. In September 1779, Brigadier General George Garth was sent to replace Prevost, sailing from New York. As it turned out, Garth was captured by French ships before he could even reach Savannah. Prevost was left to defend the town against the French and British forces, which came to be known as the Siege of Savannah. Hi there, Benjamin Lincoln here, no relation to Abe. In a shocking move, the British Army captured the city of Savannah, Georgia a year earlier in December 1778. And by the fall of 1779, we were ready to take it back. Colonial forces knew they would need the help of the French to take Savannah. So General Benjamin Lincoln planned to meet up with Charles Hector, Comte d'Estaing, to assault the city. My men and I were in Charleston when we got word that Comte d'Estaing was on his way with a fleet of warships and nearly 4,000 men. So we set off for Savannah. Turns out that the French arrived before Lincoln and on September 16th proceeded to go ahead and launch their assault operations. However, it was very foggy. We finally arrived and teamed up with our French allies to launch a major assault on the Spring Hill Redoubt on October 9th, 1779, and it didn't go as planned. Our French allies were surrounded by fog and thought we were also battling with the Loyalist militia. Wrong, you're dealing with us, the almighty British regulars. Fortunately, when the fog cleared, the French lines were completely exposed. Comte d'Estaing was wounded twice, and Casimir Pulaski, a Polish cavalryman, was mortally wounded trying to lead the horsemen through a breach in the British line. The losses could have been much worse had it not been for a regiment of black soldiers who stood up to the British. A number of reasons contributed to this Savannah loss, including a deserter had tipped off our attack plans. The attack was supposed to happen before dawn, and delays allowed the British to bring in reinforcements. The Redcoat siege on Savannah was crushing. To make things worse, the French sailed away. We had no other option but to surrender. This was not a great way to start off the southern campaign. We suffered some huge losses with our casualties. With Savannah under control, the British set their eyes on Charleston in late 1779. We set out on our voyage south from New York, bringing fresh Redcoat troops to the southern campaign. This voyage took way too much time, and we finally managed to land on February 11, 1780, near Seabrook Island. And we still had 25 miles to Charleston, which required us to cross some swamps. You're crazy if you think I'm crossing that. We sent a few thousand troops at General Lincoln's request. Unfortunately, they wouldn't arrive in time. Our troops arrived in early April, which was a tad late. The British landed at Gibbs Point, not far from Charleston, in late March. On April 1st, the British began their first siege parallel. The American fortifications stretched across Charleston Neck between the two rivers. The focal point was at Tabby Hornwork, a remnant of which still remains in Marion Square in Charleston. The British commenced their bombardment of Charleston on April 13th, and the two sides exchanged artillery and small arms fire until the siege's conclusion. The completion of a second parallel on April 17th brought British guns even closer to Charleston. Oh boy, we were grossly outnumbered. The British had successfully trapped us in the city, and the Redcoats began to bombard our defensive works. Oh, it wasn't looking good. On April 21st, General Lincoln agreed to surrender the city if all of his men could leave unharmed in hopes of preserving his army, but the British wouldn't take it. The British forces continued to get closer and closer to Charleston. By early May, after a month of the siege, General Clinton was having the city bombarded with constant cannon barrage. We had the American troops surrounded. Lincoln finally gave up after a month on May 12, 1780, and his army of 5,000 men surrendered or escaped. If things weren't already bad enough for the Continental Army, it was just about to get worse. To secure control of South Carolina outside of Charleston, General Charles Cornwallis established a supply garrison in Camden. Hi, Nathaniel Greene here. Washington chose Horatio Gates as the commander for the next engagements in the war. So you ask why I'm here? Good question. Well, stay tuned to the end of the video and you'll see why. Horatio Gates marched his army into South Carolina, intent on liberating the state from British control. As Gates neared Camden, word of his movement reached Cornwallis at his headquarters in Charleston, who then hightailed it to Camden with his troops. The Americans thought they had us outnumbered by 2 to 1. Oh, they were wrong. It was a nightmare. By the time we reached Camden in August 1780, we were exhausted and hungry. And it didn't help that a quarter of our troops couldn't fight because of dysentery. Unfortunately, our commander, Horatio Gates, decided to go ahead and launch an attack. Not sure what Gates was thinking, but he put some young green recruits from Virginia on the left flank. He should have known. This is where the most experienced troops are placed. I'm from the experienced North Carolina militia, and we were placed in the center. There was a group of green recruits from Virginia, which Gates placed on the left, but they fled when British regulars attacked them. Oh, it was a nightmare. We tried to reinforce the left flank, but it was no use. The troops from Maryland and Delaware kept fighting, but it wasn't enough for a Patriot victory. Unfortunately, Gates' reputation went down in smoke too. He had been the hero of Saratoga, but he never recovered from his poor showing at Camden. 2 months after the Camden disaster, I replaced Horatio Gates to command the Southern campaign. The hero of Saratoga wasn't the hero he claimed to be. Okay guys, let's wrap up with 4 trivia questions. Ready, set, let's go! First question. In what year did the British initially capture Savannah? A. 1776, B. 1778, C. 1779, or D. 1781? The correct answer is B. 1778. The second question is, Nathaniel Greene took over the Southern campaign after which battle? A. Savannah, B. Charleston, C. Camden, D. Cowpens. The correct answer is C. Camden. The third question is, which battle is considered the greatest loss of the American Revolution for the Continental Army? A. Brandywine, B. Charleston, C. Camden, or D. Savannah? The correct answer is B. Charleston. Our last and final question is, colonial troops won at which battle? A. Charleston, B. Savannah, C. Camden, D. Trenton. The correct answer is D. Trenton. Congratulations, join us next time.